Delta Rune is a game made by Toby Fox as a spiritual successor to his game Undertale. On October 31st, now known as Delta Rune Wednesday, Tony Fox released Delta RuneScape for free. Everyone thank him right now. Please, say it out loud with me. Thank you, Toby Fox. Alright, good. Undertale is a game that is well known for its terrific storytelling, and Delta Rune, or what we have of it so far, is on par in that regard. However, the story in Delta Rune is noticeably different from anything we've experienced so far in Undertale. While Undertale has notes of something sinister that only emerge due to players' choice, Delta Rune takes a different approach, wearing its sinister themes on its sleeve. Delta Rune also has far less player choice when it comes to violence. Fighting enemies and sparing them is still a mechanic, but it is no longer the game's backbone, and your choice in that regard has no bearing on the story. The final game might have choice, but I doubt it. Nowhere is this divergence from Undertale more apparent than with the game's main character, Susie. Yeah, you heard me right. Susie's the main character of Delta Rune, not this wackadoo with a heart condition that you just so happen to play as. It isn't always the case that the narrator of a story is the main character. Look at Sherlock Holmes' Watson, or Nick from The Great Gatsby by Leonardo DiCaprio. Much in the same way, KRIS is not in fact the protagonist of Delta Rune. Susie is. She undergoes an arc, and the narrative focuses on her and her story character growth. The game doesn't waste any time introducing Susie to us, thank fucking God. After briefly getting us acclimated to the world through some lovely cutscenes with a very pleasant atmosphere, Susie the Purple Yoshi bursts into the classroom, and without a single line of dialogue, the tone shifts. Soon after, she's shoving you against a locker, literally threatening your life. What a babe, what an icon. Susie's appearance is also threatening. Her eyes are hidden, and she has a big spooky biting mouth with big teeth. This will become important later, so keep it in the back of your brains. At this point in the tale, Susie is an enigma. We're not sure what's going on inside her head, and her threats are incredibly sinister. I was actually scared that Susie might come through my computer and bite me, which she did. She did do that. Soon, Susie and KRIS find their way into a scary closet and get transported to the totally not underground, meeting the best, softest boy, Rosselli. Rosselli shows some insight into Susie's character from a narrative standpoint. For one, he's a big foil to Susie. Where she's perpetually dour and a complete bully, Rosselli is kind and sweet to a fault. Secondly, he serves as a plot device, which forces Susie into situations she normally wouldn't be a part of, like helping people. At this point, we're also introduced to Lancer, who's the second softest boy, and we'll get more into him later. For a while, though, you travel with Susie. You might notice that you can't actually control any of her actions yet. She'll just automatically attack enemies. As someone who might have played Undertale, a game where you're encouraged not to fight, seeing enemies take damage is oddly stressful. It feels wrong when Susie is doing everything she can to kill things with a big fucking axe, and you're just trying to resolve things peacefully. You later get the ability to warn enemies about Susie so she can't hurt them, but the feeling remains, further causing Susie's character to feel unsettling. The choice to make Susie the main character but not the player stand-in actually makes a lot of sense. It's hard to relate to someone if they're a monster who threatens others, and I doubt many players would choose to do the same things that Susie does, such as shove KRIS into a locker and smack Lancer. No, my baby! Giving the player control of KRIS makes a lot more sense because we become an observer to Susie's bullying, making her into a character who we can look at through the filter of someone else. Soon, Susie befriends Lancer, who is the self-proclaimed bad guy of the story. Initially, this feels like a betrayal, as we take Lancer's self-label pretty seriously, even if he is kind of a goofball. He's genuinely standing in our way, and we expect him to be evil and sinister, and Susie helping him feels kind of like a dick move. The player learns that this is anything but the case. Susie just kind of farts around with Lancer, helping him becoming a better bad guy. The truth is, they both kind of suck at it, but they can both enjoy each other's company as a couple of morally ambivalent misfits. At this point, we're beginning to see progression in Susie's character, real effective progression. Starting out as a scary woman who bullies mute children to being kind of just a misfit. Progression says something deep about bullying in general, that usually bullies are just victims of circumstance who choose to victimize others. There's no insight into why Susie's a bully, but because of her interactions with Lancer, we suddenly see a different side of her, and her bullying begins to fade away into more genuine emotions for her friend. Even when she's antagonizing KRIS and Rosselli, it takes on a fun and lighthearted tone. Circumstance and perspective is all it takes to change your ways, an opportunity that Susie has never had before. As more time goes on and Susie travels with Lancer and KRIS more, it's clear that she's just as bloodthirsty and belligerent, but she's entered a world where belligerent solutions don't work as well. This reinforces the idea of a shift in perspective. Susie's still a scary dinosaur who means business, but her time in Darkville makes her understand the use of more mindful solutions. It shows the value of exploring outside of one's comfort zone. Things come to a head at about 3/4 through the story. Unfortunately, Lancer abandons the group because his father is the guy who's making all the bad stuff happen around Darktown, and the group has to fight his dad to get to the end of their quest. Lancer is torn between his father, the actual big bad, and his new pals, culminating in a very poignant moment for Susie. She doesn't realize that the king is Lancer's dad and repeatedly states that she's going to kick the king's ass right in front of Lancer, which upsets him, causing him to run off and put them in shitty card jail with this weird clown. Later on, Susie threatens to fight Lancer to get through him, but he, unlike everyone else, isn't actually afraid of her. This is something that Susie desperately needed. Someone who doesn't feed into her bullying and instead strips away to what she really is. Someone frightened, needing a friend. Just to be clear, bullying is bad. Susie's a bad person at the beginning of this story, and I'm not saying that the victims of bullying are in some way enabling them, and victim shaming is hardly the picture I'm trying to paint here. It's not a victim's responsibility to not feed into people's bullying. It's just important for Susie's growth to see someone who sees her, as someone who her usual tactics fail on. Susie is far from stupid, and she begins to understand that this world is one where bullying and violence just don't work. More than that, she sees that the solutions she's been trying so far are way more enjoyable. She makes a friend in Lancer, something she never had at school. The Darkland shows Susie just how good it can be to enjoy others. This makes her soften up and join KRIS and Rosselli for real. The turning point is solidified by being able to include Susie in acts, as well as being able to control her directly. As a player thus far, we've been trying to solve situations amicably, and Susie's been going against that goal, but now she's working with us. In the end, she agrees to fight Lancer's asshole dad because he's being a dick to her friend. She never really cares deeply about getting home throughout the narrative, and this time is no different. She wants to help her little buddy, and she doesn't think twice about doing it on terms that'll make him happy. In the end, Lancer's dad is finally defeated by Susie in an act of non-violence, and Lancer, who never actually did anything evil, except for that creepy face, becomes the new king. When Susie emerges from Upside Down with KRIS, she's pushed her bangs out of her face. Remember a while ago when I told you to remember Susie's creepy appearance? This is important again, because now she's got her eyes showing. Throughout the story, we see her eyes more and more often, until finally we see her default sprite with no bangs at the very end. The rest of the story might not focus on Susie quite as much, so Delta Rune in its entirety might not feature Susie as the main character, but at least this game we have so far is all about everyone's favorite purple gal. I can't wait to see what Tony does with Undertale 2 Delta Rune Boogaloo next, and I have some questions, like, where are all the other humans, and why did Sans fuck my video game mom? And what's Asriel's major in college? But I'm sure they'll all be answered soon, when Toby Fox releases the full game in 7 years? Fuck! Oh well, at least we'll have time to speculate on the inevitable relationship between Noelle and Susie. But that's just my theory. A gay theory.